going to be showing you the difference between the two and how it applies to the things that you'd like to paint with your acrylics. We're going to begin with the dry blending technique first, and I want to show you how to blend. Basically, it's the wet paint into the wet paint. And I base coated the background, and I'm going to pick up a little bit of white, and I have a lot of paint in my brush, so I'm going to just blot it just a little bit. So it's not a dry brushing technique. I do want to come in, and I'm going to have a wet application of paint. Then I'll pick up the background color or the base coat color, which would also be a mid-tone color, and then I'm going to just very softly blend this into here. And I'm barely touching the surface. And then I'll do it on the other side also. So let me turn it. So again, I have a lot of paint into my brush, and I set it down just a little bit hard, but what I'm going to do is just come in and very softly fade it away. If I need to, I can come back in with that highlight color because it's still wet, and just basically go over it, blending these two values together. And you can see sometimes I pat, and so what I'm doing is I'm just pulling it, and I'm barely touching the surface, getting a really nice blend. Okay, so now let me show you exactly how we would use that if we were creating a sphere. So the first thing I want to do is I want to come in, and I want to make sure that I put a lot of paint down. It's shiny, it's wet paint, it's not dry brushed, but I call it dry brush blending because I'm not putting any medium down. What I'm doing right here now is I'm going to pick up my base coat color, and I'll be turning this so I want you to be able to see it. So I'm going to come in and tap along the sides, get that base coat color in very quickly. And then I'm going to blend it out. And when I start blending and I'm using this circular motion, I'm using ever so light of a touch. So then what I'm going to do is pick up some more base coat color, and I'm just going to go around the outside edge, make sure that this is blended really nice. It's going to look a little bit lighter because the blue obviously will dry darker once it's drying. So this got a little bit misshapen, so I will go in really quick, and that's what's really nice, is as long as it's still wet, you can play with it a little bit, and I can so easily just go in using ever so light of a touch and blend away my highlight. Making sure it's a nice circular highlight because this is going to be a sphere. So then what I'll do is I'll bring in more of my base coat color and just blend this away. And again, when I'm merging two colors together, I use ever so light of a touch. This is simply using wet paint into wet paint. Then I'll pick up the dark really quick. And what I like about these brushes is because they're a dome shape, you can just go right up to the edge with them, almost as if you're floating. You can keep a nice crisp edge, and then I can kind of taper it. But then what I want to do is start blending these two values together. I'm using ever so light of a touch, and my brush is laid back in a 30-degree position. So I don't have my brush up like this, I have it laid back. That automatically will take off the pressure off of your paint and allow you to blend better. I'm going to pick up just a little bit more of a darker color and blend right here where I have a line. So you can see you can go back and forth with your values until you get a really nice blend. And this is all still wet. I'm working very quickly. And just in a minute or two, I can create basic form. And this is just with bottled acrylics. Now I can see that I have a little bit of edge here, and I'm not sure if it's because this is still wet or if I had a little bit of the highlight color in there. So all I have to do to get rid of that little bit of that line is take my base coat color and just go along and blend the two together. And that's what I love about acrylics, is it's so easy to go in and make corrections, because as soon as it starts to dry, you can go in and add layers, or while it's still wet, you can blend. So this is just basic form. I would go in and add many more values, because it takes 5 values to create form. But I just wanted to show you that's how I do my acrylic blending. So now on this leaf, I want to discuss how I would use this dry blending. Well, the first thing I would do is go into my highlighter, my shade color. So I have a wet application of paint, and I'm going to just highlight this whole center of the leaf. And I'm bringing in wet paint. But I'll do one side, and then I'll move on to the next. And I want to make sure that this is all the way up to the edges. And again, because these are tapered brushes, you can go right up to those edges. I really like the shape of these brushes. Okay, so then what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up some of my base coat color, and I'm going to come back on in here. And you can see with the sheen of the paint that this is definitely wet. And I'm using ever so light of a touch. Right there. I'll just walk this out a little bit, because I had a little bit of a ridge. You don't want to have any ridges of paint. So then I'll flip it around, and I'm going to put my highlight in over here. And I want to make sure that they meet. And I want to make sure that the paint is nice and wet and that it's shiny. And then I'll pick up my base coat color, and I'll work into it. So let's flip this around so I can evaluate it. And I think I want to give it just a little bit more highlight color in here. And I can keep working, as long as my paint is wet, I can go in and keep blending it. You have to be very careful with this, because like over here is going to start drying fairly quickly. So if you feel as though it's starting to dry and there's a little bit of area that's a little bit dark, you can actually go in and just kind of tap it in and then blend it away. So I think that's looking pretty good. I like the way it's blended. I don't see any really harsh lines. And so then I'm going to go in and add my shade color. And I'm using the same brush, and so I can go right into the tip of the leaf and just bring it out. And then again, I'll pick up some base coat or mid-tone color and blend it away. So I have dark, mid-tone, light. And actually what happens is as you blend these together, you actually create new values too. And so we'll go into the back half. And you can see by the shine that this is fairly wet. I just barely blotted it so that I don't have any ridges on it. Now I have to be careful. I'm seeing that I have a blended color there and I don't want to take and put dark next to light. So I'll go back into my base coat color. And I'll come over here and just meet this. And then we'll just blend it away. So you can see we've already created form with that. Okay, now I want to talk about how I use this wet into wet blending, because I generally will use it for flowers and sometimes fruit, because I find that when I blend my values together with acrylics, they turned out so beautifully. So what I want to do is go in and put a highlight in here. Okay, so when you are going to add a highlight, and basically I'm going to bring in a cone shape, and we talked about that in advanced floating, is I want to come in and bring in a little ripple on the edge. So I just put in a little cone. Now that would be way too harsh. It would look, you'd look at that and you'd say, oh, I see a cone shape on your petal. So that's why it's important to come in and just blend this away with your base coat color. Because now what you have is a lovely ripple started on the edge. And you could do the same thing as we did with the leaf, as let's say I'm trying to create form of this, of the petal itself. I can come in. So now that was a little bit too much paint. I was a little overzealous there as I loaded it. Because you want it wet, but you don't want so much paint on it that it's going to create ripples, because otherwise you're going to get these hard edge. So obviously to leave it like that, it's way too harsh and it just looks like a line. It does not look like a flower. But now when I come in with my base coat color, we can blend this away. And again, I'm using just such a light touch. When I merge the two colors together, you have to use a very, very light touch, otherwise you're going to just lift it. Then I can go back and forth and I can go into my highlight color a little bit more, because again, this is wet now, the whole thing is wet. And I can bring in a little bit more highlight and just blend it away. Now I'm on a little bit of I am on a cardboard background, so it's not the best surface to paint on. But you get the gist of it. So let me show you all of these here. What I would do is come in, lay in my highlight, and then come in and blend with the base coat color. And so you can see all these little ripples here. That would be very hard to do with floats and without blending wet into wet. And that's why I like to form flowers with the actual blending technique, because it just is so much easier. And even when you're pulling in and this is rolling over right here, I would bring in my highlight, come in with my base coat color, and meet it just like I did with the leaf before. And the same with these, I would just pull the highlights down and meet them and blend them out. It just makes creating beautiful flowers so much easier. How does wet blending vary from dry blending? Well, I generally will put some extender down. And so I dampen the area. I want to make sure that the area is just shiny, but it's not super wet. So I'll go back and forth just a little bit. And I want to make sure that it's not running at all. It's just simply shiny. There's no pools on here. So then what I can do is come in and I'll block in my highlight color. Then what I'll do, just like before, is I'm going to pick up my mid-tone color and I'm going to come along the edge, make sure I don't have any water in this brush, and I'm going to just very softly, and here I'm just kind of tapping and making a little X as I'm blending the two values together and barely touching the surface, and then I'll blend it out. And I'll do the same thing. I'll pick up some more middle value because you really need to make sure that you're blending paint, wet into wet paint here. Now I'm going to just really lighten my pressure. And again, I'm making a little pitty pat pull and just breaking this up a little bit. I just removed a little bit of my dark color on there so I could blend it a little bit better. So I just pinched the paint out of it. How would we use the wet blending on this sphere? Well, it would be the same way. We're going to go in and we're going to dampen it. And we're using the extender to dampen it. And I'll block in my highlight color. So now because I have that base coat color down, I don't have to pick up more paint. I can just very lightly pull on this. And I'm making little X's and a little pitty pat pull, but I'm using very light pressure. So I'm just pulling the highlight out onto the base coat color. I could pick up a little bit of that base coat color in my brush if I wanted to and blend the two values together. Or I could just lay this above, because what I'm doing is also blending this color out. And I want to make sure I don't have any lines anywhere. So it just looks like a nice highlight. So you can see the similarities between blending just paint, wet paint into wet paint, and then also using extender. What's really nice about the extender is it gives you more time to play. And for those of you who like to use a mop brush, you could use a mop brush. So now what I'm going to do is as I'm going around this outside edge, I am going to pick up a little bit of this base coat color and just blend this away. Because I want to make sure that I can't see where one value starts and the other value stops. And I'm hoping that you can see all of this, because the one thing is when you wet your boards with extender, a lot of times all you can see is shine. So I've got a little bit of my base coat color and I've mixed a little bit of it into the extender just to give it a little bit more open time, because this is all about how we do a wet blend. So now I'm going to pick up my shade color and I'll go along the edge. And the extender is still wet there. So one thing I noticed is that when I do put in my paints with the extender, it does tend to make my paints a little bit more transparent. So sometimes I have to do this with a second application because it's hard to get a nice coat with the extender down. So now I'm going to start blending it, and I want to make sure that I go onto my paper towel and pull out any of the dark color because I'm starting to blend the two colors together. And again, I'm using a little pity pat pull, bringing it outward. And you can see how it's just starting to fade away. You don't want to have any obvious texture lines or any obvious lines where one value starts and the other one stops. As I take my brush off the screen, what I'm doing is I'm blotting it to get the whatever dark value out or light value out so that I can go back in with a clean brush and do a little bit more blending. Okay, I think I need a little bit more dark. Now this is still wet, so I can just go in and add a little bit more dark in here and blend it just a little bit more. If it was starting to dry, I would dig holes in it. So it's learning when to stop is very important. And so I think this is now where I am at a stopping point because it is starting to dry in here. And I'm losing my sheen. That's when I know it's starting to dry. So we're going to go on and we're going to do our leaf. You want to make sure that you keep your extender on the object that you're painting. If you go on the outside edges, it's going to bleed out. So not only don't you want puddles, but you want to make sure that you watch that your extender does not go outside the lines of the object. So I'm going to come in and blot in my highlight, just block it in there. One thing I wanted to say about the brushes is that I use the Silver Monza, and this is in my Creative Blending set. Most short dome brushes will work. If you're interested in getting these type of brushes, I have a link in the description below the video, so if you want to get them. But I know that Jasonia has some wonderful dome brushes, and there's some other brands on the market that work wonderfully too. These are simply the ones that I use. So you can see how nice that just blended out. So I'll come over on this side. I'm going to pick up a little bit more of that highlight color. And again, I'm just doing a little pity pat pull and pulling it out. This side has a little bit of a line. That's what you look for. You want to make sure that your blending is really nice and even. And you don't want your highlight to grow. This started growing a little bit, and I know I'm going to come in with a shade really quick. So I'm coming back in with my base coat color and just blending that out. So then I'm going to come in and I'm going to put in the shade, and again I can go right in the corner. I'm just blocking it in. And then I'll start blending it out. So I'm going to come over and I'm going to pinch the color out of my brush, and I'll just start pulling it out. And this is nice and soft. So what I do is I want to make sure that I'm not having any harsh lines and that it's blending really nicely. If I need to, like right now there's a little bit of a line. That's when I go in and I get my base coat color and I just come in and I soften the line. And then we'll do the same thing with the tip. A lot of times, like right here, it's wet. I can't tell at this point if that is blended or not because it's just wetness. So I'm going to just take a little bit of the base coat color and make sure I blend that away. So I'm thinking that's looking fairly well blended. And you can always go in and add more layers. This is a little bit irregular, but I can go in and add some more highlight. And this is completely dry now, so I can actually go over it with these brushes and just do a little bit of dry brushing with the highlight color. If it's not white enough or I need to add just a little bit to it. We're going to come in with the extender on the petal. And I want to make sure that it's dampened, but not too wet. If it's too wet, what happens is the paint just gets too transparent. You can't even see your highlights, so you have to come in with a greater value change. Or it's not going to change, or it's not going to show up at all. So I'm going to just show you that I can come in. So now I can see just by the highlights that's forming here that's a little bit too wet. So what you can do is just go in and blot it, and that will take the excess moisture off. And I can come in, put in my highlight color, and this is to create a nice little ripple. Then I can come in and just blend in my base coat color. And again, using ever so light of a touch, little pity pat pull is the motion of the brush. So what I can do is also let that dry and build it up a little bit more. I'll go ahead and I'll put my highlight color across the whole petal, just kind of black it in first. I like to leave soft edges as I black it in. And I'm just going to go from one side to the next. Then I'll come in and soften the edges. I'm using a little pitty. It almost looks like I'm using a circular motion, but what it is it's just a really fast pitty pat pull where it is a little crisscross, because I am blending the colors, and that's hard to do if you use a circular motion. I didn't go all the way to the edge with my highlight color, so it almost looks like there's a dent in my petal. And I'm just softening it. Now what you can do is you can always come in with a mop brush. You can come in and just soften it really nice with a mop brush too. Where you can't really, it's hard to use a mop brush without the extender. So you can see this, you can see on this leaf here, what I did is I came in and I put in my highlights on both sides and I blended those, and then I had my mid-tone and then my dark tone, and then I came in with all the veining and lighting and extra colors there. And then this is very similar, only a lot of these were along the outside edges. In that case, you can easily float with acrylics for that. So there are times to blend and times not to blend. So along this edge here, it would be easily to just float that in. But then here's one of those little triangular shape highlights. That's when you would do some blending. Same with over here. And then on this petal over here, I would put in my highlight and then blend that out and blend that out. So I wanted to show you that there's times where you can use your more traditional floating techniques, but there are also times where the blending really comes in handy. You can also just do dry brushing in there too, and layer that out. So I now have these back to back so you can see them both together. This was where I went in and I dry brush blend using the paint wet into wet. And then this was the board that I used where I used the extender. And you really cannot see much difference in them. What's really important is that you know how to get rid of ridges and that you know how to blend, and so that there's not any lines. As I'm looking at this, I can see that there's a little bit of lines there. So what I would do is I would come in, dampen it again with my extender, and then just come in with a little bit of my base coat color and work that out. And you want to make sure that it's nice and smooth and even like this one here, so that you don't have any obvious start and stop lines with your shades and highlights. Very important with flowers. As I pointed out with this project, there's just so many different ways acrylic painters can go in and achieve a really pretty realistic look. You can use your basic floating and dry brushing techniques, and I've put the links in the description of the video below for those videos. And then also you can go in and you can do your blending. So I wanted to show you that as acrylic painters we have a lot of options, but I must say that when I'm working with flowers, especially ripple flowers like I showed the iris to you before, that I prefer blending, and I do prefer the dry blending where I'm just blending wet paint into each other. So I hope these videos are helping you on your painting journey, and that if you're new to my channel that you will subscribe and give me a thumbs up if you're enjoying the videos, and also make sure you click on the bell so that you'll be notified when I do upload new videos. And please share with your friends. I really want to spread the word that these are available to anybody who wants to learn more about their painting skills and improve them, or just learn the basic skills and learn how to paint. And if anything, invite a friend over and show them these videos. Work together. Together we can really make our art form grow. In the description below I have a lot of links listed for you, so make sure you go and read those, especially if you haven't seen the ones on how to float and how to do the more advanced floats. So until next time, I hope that your painting always brings you joy.